why don't we start kicking off this panel? I'm really, really happy to be here. My name is Bijan Ashat. I am part of the first Hertie class and cohort of 2007, which kind of gives away my age. And I'm really, really happy to be here with an established, esteemed panel of award-winning alumni. And we want to focus on something very relevant. But first of all, I also want to thank the school, in particular Nena and Dino from the Alumni Affairs team. They've been extremely helpful in setting this up, helping us get this going. I also want to thank my fellow Alumni Council members. The reason we're showing up, the reason we're doing this is not just because we want to have a panel. We deeply care, and the panelists and all alumni deeply care about the school, care about the community, and care about the relevance of the work that we're doing as Hertie alumni. And so we don't just want to, this is not just a panel as, you know, any other panels that talks to people. We really want to be part of a conversation around the first 20 years of the Hertie School and what it means for the next 20 years. And what better way to talk about the next 20 years than actually looking back and thinking about the 2,700 alumni that are already part of this community. I just did a quick calculation, so hear me out. If you assume over 20 years having 2,700 alumni, on average, let's assume that they have 5 years of relevant experience by now. That already makes for 13,500 years of experience. Why would we not use that experience and feed it back to the school and give feedback with care? How can we be even better? How can we be even more relevant in the next 20 years? So with this selection of a wonderful panel, we want to kick off that conversation. It's not the last. And I would like to start with something very simple, which is, Alejandra, if I could start with you. We were thinking about doing 5 facts. So your name, your hometown, the program and class year, your current role, and then tell us about a fun fact as well.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here and to share about these experiences that we have been having while being alumni from the Hertie School of Governance. Well, my name is Alejandra Leal. I am based in Mexico City. I am MPP of 2012. And also, I am co-director of Centrico, is an NGO that works on public policy regarding safe mobility. And also, I am the national coordinator of the Safe Mobility Coalition, which gather more than 100 NGOs working in Mexico for better regulation and also public policy related to road safety and sustainable mobility. One fun fact about me is that I love dancing salsa. I've been practicing for a few years now, and this is also one of my passions.
Thank you very much. And before I hand over to Jeff, I want to acknowledge that I think almost all of us are non-native speakers. So just in terms of referencing that, why don't you mention the name of the coalition in Spanish?
Coalición Movilidad Segura.
Wonderful, thank you. Jeff, do you want to go next?
Yes, I would. Very nice to be here. I wish I could see everybody who's participating, but we're together in heart and spirit. So my name is Jeff Corsi Klein. I'm an MPP cohort member from 2017. I work at Multitudes Foundation, which is a European-wide foundation supporting initiatives throughout Europe who are working towards greater representation in political leadership positions, but also working towards reimagine what politics can be and how politics should be in order to address the huge issues we have in society. Fun fact, if I haven't, I'm not sure if I forgot a question, but a fun fact about me many people don't know is that I'm a real sucker for octopuses, for octopi, however you want to call it. Both is correct, by the way, octopi and octopuses. I just think they're so fascinating animals and just completely out of this world. So I love them.
Wonderful. More questions on that later. Damian.
Yes, I would love to hear actually why, Jeff, why you like octopuses or octopi so much. It would be interesting to hear. No, but also thanks for the invite from my side. I'm very happy to learn all these fun facts about all of you. I'm still thinking about mine, but anyways, my name is Damien Bisnager. I'm from Frankfurt originally. My current position is that I am a member of the European Parliament for the movement Volt, which is also pan-European, like Jeff's Multitudes Foundation. I'm in the class, it's now I have to think about it. So I think, so I finished in 2018, so class 2018, and I did the dual degree with Columbia in New York. And a fun fact, wow, I got so bored in New York in the first semester that I tried to learn coding. I don't know if that's funny. I don't know. I try to think of other not so much. Okay, I think about something else maybe towards the end of the panel. I can come up with something.
We need to come back to that, because otherwise it's just feedback to Columbia University. But Anna-Marie, why don't you go next?
Sure. I'm Marie Cortas. I'm calling in from Berlin. My original hometown is Schwerin, a city of 7 lakes in the northern part of Germany. I'm a class of 2014, and my current role is I'm a policy officer on the topic of refugee policy at the Berlin Senate Department for Integration. So for anyone who doesn't know the Berlin public administration, that's the Berlin ministry, basically. My fun fact would be that I play rugby, and I started playing it in a small country called Costa Rica, which is not really known for rugby.
Okay, wow. Joseph. Unmute.
I want to send you greetings from Sierra Leone, where I currently work. My name is Joseph Ayamga. I'm the country director for SEND Sierra Leone. I'm actually Ghanaian, but I have been working here in Sierra Leone for a very long time. And I'm also a member of the 2011 MPP class, and I'm also the first winner of the Alumni Achievement Award. And here in Sierra Leone, I work a lot with women. So all I do is to support their political aspirations. And I lead one of the biggest women's network here in Sierra Leone, across 16 districts. And all we do is to make sure that they have political competencies to be able to participate in local and national decision-making processes. And we have been doing that a lot here, especially in elections. So that is what I do here in Sierra Leone. One fun fact about me is I don't usually sleep early. I stay in the street for a very long time. So I like to be in the slums and trying to find out more information to know what problems are there and all of that. And I think that helps me a lot in my work. So it helps me to understand what are the social problems that we need to work on.
Wonderful. And you mentioned in the pre-talk, you mentioned you're working on a strategy, and being out there with the people you serve is certainly something extremely important. I want to learn more later on, but I forgot to mention my own fun fact. When I was 10 years old, I got to hammer down the Berlin Wall single-handedly, of course. Again, I'm giving away my age, but that was an amazing, amazing time for a 10-year-old with a hammer being allowed to take on something that nobody really liked. All right. I want to kick it off with a question that I am very curious about to hear. And this is really putting yourself in the perspective of your current role and career in making a difference. All of you are engaged in this area. So what were the most important aspects that made the education and the experience at Hertie stand out as a useful experience and possibly a community to you? And I want to start, we don't have to do all 5. I want to leave it open because we have many questions coming. But if you feel very strongly, I'd like to start, Alejandra, with you. If you could pick up on that question, and others tell me if they want to join in.
Sure. I will start with even like the name of our school, with governance. Like normally we use this word as if everyone knows exactly what it means. And yeah, I have news for you. Not really a lot of people really know what we're talking about. So for me, it was very important to have this approach in all of the work that we have been doing. Actually, in the past, I really was involved in advocacy, but I thought that working on public policy will be only related with working with the government. In Mexico or in many Latin American countries, working for civil society, sometimes you feel it's more about philanthropy, but not really. I mean, you can also do work on public policy. So having this approach of working together with the government, with civil society, with the private sector, which is crucial, and it is also very important to have them on the table discussing and making more debates open on matters that are important for our society is very important. So yeah, I would say this helped me a lot to understand, and not only governance, but also global governance. We like a term that we should be very proud of, because we have the founder of this term in our school. And I think this is crucial, because what we have been doing locally is having an impact globally. And it is very important to be also to pay attention to what our countries are signing, because these are mandatory documents. So bringing all the things that are happening globally and collaborating with international organizations, such in my case, for example, the World Health Organization or PAHO, has been crucial also for making things happen in Mexico at the national and even at the local level. So I think having this term in mind, it's really helpful, and also gives you a lot of value on all of the processes that are happening. And it is easier for the implementation of certain laws in my case, because now society feels involved since the very beginning of the creation of certain instruments of public policy.
I really appreciate that, and I this is very familiar to my time at Save the Children, right? You learn so much more about road safety, because it is in several countries, it's the #1 killer of children. And how you connect it, right? I really appreciated how you connected it to rights, because it's connected to rights to education and access to education and so many other things. Is there a specific moment of your Hertie time that where you had a light go off and say, okay, this is how it's connected, or how you felt, you listened back? For me, I'll give you the one example of the class. Anna Maria and I talked about this earlier, about organizational failure, and that class that we took with Wolfgang Seibel that really still stands out in some of the work you do. Is there something that happened for you at the school in a class, something specific about that?
I really like the class about the campaigns of NGOs that were doing work related to climate change. I like learning about the work that you can do also in the public media. It was very important for me. And also like public policy in general. I think Kai Begrich was a huge inspiration for me in terms of looking at very specific problems and trying to put together the theory with the practice and studying a lot of cases. I think it really helped. And also he was very open to study cases from all the world. So that also was really interesting.
Damian, if I could hand over to you, there's a lot of conversation that I've been aware of in the community of, if Hertie wants to have impact, more people need to go into government as well as the other sectors. So tell me about your experience and your answer to this question.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things that I can think of, like maybe three. The first one you mentioned as a little add-on to your question, which is community. The second one I would probably call inspiration, and the third one skills. And I think all of these three things have really helped me, and in my experience in Hertie now with my current work. So when it comes to community, I think it was just really cool to have this more international outlook, but also to be based in Berlin with that international outlook and also European outlook. It really helped me for my work. At least it was very relevant, and it gave me the time to talk to people, to exchange ideas, and to test my own thoughts, and also gave me inspiration. But inspiration I also got from the classes. I mean, to be honest, I know it's a bit of a obvious choice, but the Wolfgang Ischinger class, where he basically, to be fair, told us about his experience in life, which some people didn't like, but I actually enjoyed very much, because it's so rare that we have the time to actually learn from others and their thoughts, and also to make it a bit more practical and less crazy to hear how things were happening in the rooms of negotiation rooms that he was talking about. And I very much like that we also did some current politics, which is something that I'll come back later to. But I think that was also quite cool. And when it comes to skills, I think I could have done more of the classes, but I really like to also teach things like R, like Stata, or like, I mean, these really more, let's say, mundane things of schooling your brain in more logic thinking. I think that actually helps a lot.
Appreciate it. And you give me the chance to come back to these 13,500 years of experience of the alumni that we should bring back to the school on a regular basis. Joseph, I know you're working on strategy, and in your award overview, you mentioned the importance of leadership and culture. I'm really curious how that connects back to the school and or any other things.
Well, I think leadership is the essence of everything that makes policy work wherever you find yourself. And without that leadership, there's no way you can ever get policies to work, especially when you live in a developing country like Sierra Leone. But I think that when I was at the Hertie School, there was this course called the German budget. And I took that course, and then I went to the class, and it was so complex to be there because I'm from a developing country, and they were talking about all of these processes of negotiation and all of these, and how do you actually get the budget done and all of that. So I basically sat in the class, not understanding a lot of what was going on, but I kept on. I just sat there throughout the whole class, and I kept on observing how other students were trying to respond, trying to analyze the issues and all of that. And inside that class, I realized that you don't always have to know to be able to lead and all of those things. It's important to listen, and it is also important to shape some of your emotional, your social intelligence and all of those things, and then being able to understand who are the key actors in the room, who have competencies in the different areas that can help you to be able to get to where you are. So I think that one thing that I would say Hertie School provided was, you have this international flavor, different students from different countries. I think at our time, we almost had representatives from every continent, and they were there. They speak different languages. We spoke the same English, but in different dialects and all of that. Sometimes some of them were easy to understand, some you couldn't understand anything. But somebody would not learn about those things. But you learn how to, to be very tolerant, to be very understanding, and to listen well, to be able to understand what the other person is saying. And they were very brilliant students from across the whole country. And sometimes you have the feeling that you don't know anything. Because anytime you bring a topic, somebody else already knows, and they have an idea as to how that problem can be solved. So what I meant by this is that it helps you to actually think a lot about yourself, and to be able to reach out, and to be able to learn from others, to be able to listen, and to be able to network. And those are some of the things that you need in leadership. That if you don't have all of these skills, you learn the policy cycle, and then you're able to understand all of that. But it takes more than just understanding it that way to be able to get things done. And one of the things that I would share, Sierra Leone passed one of the transformative gender laws here in Sierra Leone, where we played a very critical role. And one thing that I was able to use was because of some of the negotiation skills that I learned at the Hertie School, communication skills, and understanding how to enhance participatory processes. Because if policies cannot be developed where you have only a few group of people doing it, there has to be dialogue, there has to be communication, there has to be negotiation. All of those things, they take time, and it helps you to have a little bit of patience before you can be able to achieve that. So it took us more than 10 years to be able to negotiate with the government to get the law passed. And I think some of the skills that I learned there was how to work with people. And apart from the academic activities that I learned, but you learn to work with people even when you don't like them, or even when, because there were always assignments that you have to work with other people, and then you have to discuss with other people, even when you don't want to discuss with other people. And so that is also one of the things that helps you shape your leadership, because the system is already there and it forces you to learn even when you don't want to learn. So I think all of those things, they are not documented, but at least they go in one way or the other to shape our thinking. And I use a lot of that in leading the NGO here. I use it to network, I use it to mobilize resources, I use it to form allies, and then to work with people that I even don't like to be able to get some of the things that I want.
I appreciate it. And a message to recruitment: do recruit people who don't like each other, because it's going to challenge you in your group work. Anna-Marie, I know hearing about something taking 10 years in order to get done is something you might want to add on. And then Jeff, I know that you want to come in afterwards.
Yeah, so I can just add on to what Joseph just says, like, you know, that things take time, that we need to listen, and that we need to talk to people. And I think something that I took from Hertie a lot is like not just talking to people, but putting it into kind of like, for me, like this aspect of problem definition. It's kind of something I really, really like. It hit in that Hertie like all the time. You need to understand the problem. You need to understand where, you know, everyone comes from and all these things. And because for me, it's like, I mean, yeah, I work with refugee policy and like super complex problems, lots of stakeholders. There's not one single solution. So you really, really need to dive into the depths of it. And yeah, and I remember like I felt like from every class, like it was always the thing, do a good definition of the problem and understand stakeholders, talk to them, and then you can only then start finding solutions. Because what I do feel is that what happens often in the public sector is people just start like, oh yeah, I want a solution. But like if you haven't understood the problem, you can't really find a solution which actually works. So yeah, just adding on to this, and then I'm just really, really underlying the international mix. I think this is such a difference to any other university we have here. And this really, really changed, you know, how I see the world, the people I interact with, and just having, yeah, like different outlook on policy as well. And
thank you. I appreciate it.
And what you already said, the public policy failure class, I have to say, I still get out the notes, even in my day-to-day work. So that was a class which really impacted my professional life.
Thank you, Jeff. I wanted to come to you, and I was thinking about this, and I'm far away from Germany, but I see the AfD being at 22% in the polls, and you just need to think about good governance and contributing to the common good and fighting racism and bias. And I know that that's some of the work that you've been leading. If you want to focus on that or anything else, I'd be really curious to hear.
Yes, what I forgot to say when I introduced myself is that I'm based in Berlin, and I moved to Berlin 15 years ago, also giving away my age now. I'm just following your footsteps, Bijan. But I wanted to study politics or political science. That was the reason I came. I wanted to be in the FU Berlin, and that was great. It was great to learn so much about the history of ideas, theoretical understanding of different political systems, and so on. But when I graduated, for me, the question was, okay, so what do I do with this now? What is there? I mean, do I even know how politics works? How do I even know how policies are made? How decisions are being made? And I had a little bit of knowledge on this because I was working at the Abgeordnetenhaus, the States Senate of Berlin, but still there was something I felt was lacking, and that's why I made the decision to apply for Hertie School, because I thought that I needed some practical knowledge about how these systems, these institutions function, and obviously learning about them to affect positive change, or maybe to change them altogether, was the idea coming from an anti-racist and very critical perspective that I've also harbored in the FU Berlin. So I really enjoyed the public management courses, almost the most, I would say, because I would learn how institutions tick. I really love this, to understand the infighting that happens between institutions, and also trying to think about, if you want to implement a specific measure, who to talk to, maybe also to understand how to navigate, certain responsibilities that different sections of an institution might have, and so on. So that was very helpful and very informative. After I graduated, I don't know how it was with you. You probably already had like 3-4 job offers for you, because that was also something, an appeal with Hertie. But I have to say that with me, it's not like people were like running my door in and asking me to join them. So it took some time, but it was then my first job after Hertie. I mean, first like real job after Hertie then was at Each One Teach One. It's a Black empowerment organization based in Berlin, where we are doing a lot of anti-discrimination, anti-racism work. I led anti-discrimination counseling there, and then also the Maya Yim Fund, which is a microfinancing fund for Black activists. But I was also doing a lot of advocacy work for people of African descent, fighting for our rights, but also, of course, connecting this to other forms of discrimination. And the person that hired me was Daniel Jamra, who is an alumni. I forgot the year, but he's in the Alumni Council. And that was kind of the first time I kind of was connected to this idea of, there's actually a community. This community can actually be super helpful for you to achieve or to get to your mission. And that was the case with EOTO for sure. And the case with Daniel for sure. Then after my time at EOTO, I was applying for Multitudes Foundation for the co-director position. And while I was in the process of applying, I then reached out to Dina Schmechel, who was part of my class, and just asked her about fundraising strategies, basically. So again, reaching out to the community. And then moving forward, my first funder discussion that I have, a conversation that I have, was with Henry Alt-Haker, who is vice president of the Robert Bosch Stiftung. So throughout my career so far, there have always been touch points with the Hertie community. So I would say that the decision to actually go to Hertie was right. About the question with the AFD that you asked, I think it's much bigger than just looking at the AFD. I think that right now we are living in we are experiencing a crisis of democracy, a crisis of trust, definitely. 70% of all Europeans don't trust their governments. 75% of all Europeans do not trust in political parties, and this is just a catastrophe. This is a very bad sign for democracy, since, as we know, democracies are built on trust. But the reason why people are not trusting, for one thing, is they think that they are not represented in politics, that their needs are not met, and that kind of decisions that are being made that affect them the most are not considering their lived realities and perspectives. And what the AFD has done, and this goes for many different groups, right? Many different groups that are underrepresented. If we just look at parliaments right now in all of Europe, basically, these are very homogeneous places. These are white, educated, able-bodied, cis hetero men, mostly, I would say, for sure, who are kind of reproducing themselves. But a vast majority of people is underrepresented in politics. If we think about women that are underrepresented, BPFC people, LGBTQI people, and so on and so forth. So there's this huge group. And also, this also goes in Germany for East Germans, who are underrepresented as well, and who feel ostracized by the politics that are mostly dominated by Western Germans. So what the AfD has done is, they saw this gap and then went into this gap and offered solutions, easy solutions to very complex problems. But they were very successful with this so far. It is, I think, high time for the people on the other side, for people who do progressive politics, who want to look forward and who want to save our democracy, to understand that we cannot go on with a politics that is not representative of the lived realities of its constituencies and the people who actually give power to the people who hold power. So we fundamentally have to think about how we change power structures, how we change how people relate to power. and the political culture that is just very much, building up hurdles for people to actually get into politics and to be represented. So I think that this is the antidote really to the AfD, more so than just, I don't know, just blaming them for the state of democracy that we're in right now. It's more so we need to really change the structures that we have constructed.
I appreciate your answer. And I've opened this can of worms, and I hope we can come back to it because it's very relevant. I want to bring it back to Hertie and really think about the last 20 years. What stood out? And I know that some of you want to come in. The reason I wanted to put forward that question as an institution, right, as the first private institution focusing on good governance and preparing the next generation of leaders, to me, one thing that really stood out among many other things is the way the Hertie students themselves challenged the history of the school and the foundation. And because if you teach good governance, you also need to look at yourself, right? And where does the money come from? Where does the name come from? And so that activism, to me, was an example of you're applying good governance and thinking about ethical leadership to the own institution without saying we should stop doing things. We should look at the past in order to learn for the future. My question to you is, what are those examples that stand out to you over the last 20 years?
I have one idea, but I don't want to.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so for me, I think it's always people. That's why I started with community earlier. And I have to say that I don't know who of you, worked or had a course with Henrik Enderlein, but I have to say that for me, this is still a role model that stood out as a positive example. I don't know if this goes in the direction that you were thinking, Vijay, but like, I mean, to see someone who, by being kind, can convene nations, and he did that especially with Germany and France. I mean, that for me is a power that that is really impressive to this day, and like, it's really something I admire and that I try to work towards by convening people to talk to each other and by understanding. I mean, these may be very similar cultures, but which are also very, very different. So I think that for me, it's an outstanding example of what the Hertie School did.
Thank you. Anne-Marie, I know you had some thoughts, and anyone else, please come in.
Well, I think for me, it's, I don't have like a one person or one thing. I do think what, to me, where the Hertie School stands out within the 20 years is that it's been 20 years of, as you say, critical people. And I feel that whenever, like, you meet Hertie students outside in their work, and like the way the Hertie School has managed to like teach us and bring us together, that this is something where it stands out for me, that no matter if I meet someone who is from a generation like, like first like 2007 graduated or 2022, there are always people who are like really, really critical, and like where I feel where you have like a connection when you need a problem, like you have a practical problem and you need something that you just work forward. So to me, this is something very special, which I don't know from other groups or something, where you meet and there's always a constant like, okay, yeah, we know the direction we want to go in, and we're kind of ready to tackle the world a little bit. So.
Well, for me, what stood out for me was the multidisciplinary governance and then the public policy issues that they are dealing with. And so it's very hard to find a school where you go and they're doing public policy. Then you have issues of political science, you have issues of economics, you have issues of law and other fields of studies and the options were so many. If you didn't like something, you could easily switch into other areas that you would want to learn. So that kind of platform that it provided really stood out for me. And so it was easy to be able to channel your passion towards certain direction if you wanted to. And I think at that time, I was at the time that the other president was leaving, and we had Henrik Enderlein. And what actually made me to think a lot was how passionate he was about the vision of the school and he would do anything to protect that vision. And then he was young at the time, and then he had like family, but he could combine research, he could combine lectures, he could combine politics, he could combine a lot of things, and then he was able to network and to lobby, and that is what we wanted to see. It was not just about learning, but when you had such a leader that was able to multitask like that, and at that young age, he was very, very, very passionate about what the school was about and how he wanted the vision to be. And he used every opportunity to be able to emphasize on that vision. And so even when he was in the lecture room, he would be embodying that. But the other thing that I also think that the school should not stop, because its good was the practical nature. So you had some parts of the work that you are in the classroom, and then you are interacting with people from different countries, because that already is one of the unique added value that the school has. But the practical aspect of what they do. So you had the opportunity to go out there to work with institutions, and you had the option to even stay for 1 year to learn more if you wanted to learn more. And then you could travel to maybe civil society organizations that are doing some work around policies. And you could actually travel and work with governments in developing countries to actually understand how the policy issues are discussed and all of that. I think that practical nature combined with the academic work is something that stands out, because you can have all of the other public policy schools. We had that. I had colleagues who were in the other public policy schools in Germany. We were all from Ghana. And basically, they were very much into the academics and studying. But this practical nature where they support the internship, they support all the exchanges and all of those things is something that I think really stood up for me. And if they continue like that, because they would be able to find a lot of some of the practical solutions when it comes to governance issues. And like what he was talking about Germany, because some of the practical solutions are still not found. And we are still thinking about very, very old political doctrines that people still believe in that. And even when the world is changing, the signs of the times are changing, we are still trying to follow some political philosophies that will not be relevant for the next 10 years. And I think that Hertie School needs to pay attention to some of these things, because the world is actually changing. It could be governance, it could be climate change, it could be any other thing, but there will be policies around these areas. And I think that they still need to continue with that and just improve a little bit more in terms of diversity. Because if you check the academic sphere, you check the administration, you check all of those things, diversity is there, inclusion is there, but it's not that prominent that I would say. And so if we want to be able to be relevant in the future, we have to start looking inside institutionally. What are the things that we are not doing right before we can go outside, something like that.
I appreciate that focus. And Nena and community, you've gotten 40 minutes of praise. We will get to the other side of, feedback with care. How can we be more relevant? There are quite a few really great questions that we received that we want to start addressing as well. Alejandra, I wanted to bring you back in on this one, and then in addition, maybe you can also focus on a second one. I'll give you two at the same time. I reached out to the president, Cornelia. She couldn't be here, she's on a plane, but she wanted to send a question to us about how do you manage yourself in dark times? And she wrote that question also on looking at the last few weeks in particular. So this is something, right? A lot of you focused on emotional intelligence and self-leadership. So this is a question from the president that maybe Alejandra, you want to pick up as well, and then others if they want.
Sure, thank you. Just to add on the things that have been said so far, I would like to emphasize the importance of having international groups, both from the students and also from the professors. I think this is very important to have this rich experience of what's happening around the world. And also, I would, Hertie School has been doing a great effort in finding scholarships from national governments for students from developing countries to be part of these cohorts. So this is crucial for students from the countries like Mexico and Latin America to be able to get involved in this. So it would be really nice to keep doing on this work. Also, I would say that we are rather a small school, so the attention that we get from the professors is a privilege. Really, I mean, I don't remember any time when I asked for a meeting and any of the professors, I mean, they were always available for us, and that's amazing. You don't have this in big universities, so I think the attention that we've had in the past, it has been great. And also, I would say it is very important to know that there is a board where student representatives are allowed to participate. I was very honored to be the student representative of my cohort. And I think, I mean, the information that they shared about the governance of the school was amazing. I was impressed in terms of financial and over even from the students that were being selected to be part of the studies. And also I saw they replicated this even like in the alumni meetings, telling numbers of where the countries where they are from, the scholarships and everything, and also the community being really involved on the numbers and asking questions, and you know, like we care about who is becoming part and how to be more diverse. So this transparency is crucial, and I think it's very good that the school keeps doing this. And regarding the second question, I would like to share with you like the project that I have been involved was the recognition in our constitution of the right to mobility, safe and sustainable mobility. So changing the constitution it's rather difficult, and because you require the approval in both of the chambers of our Congress and also in half of the state congresses in the country, which are 32, so this will be 17. And doing this only with the support from civil society, it was even more difficult. When you have a change that is promoted by the presidency, it's rather easier. But here we had like different champions in different areas, but mainly the support was coming from civil society. So we did have some dark times because it was very difficult to put on the agenda of different legislators at different level the importance of this right. In Mexico, 15,000 people die every year due to the lack of road safety. This is 41 people will die today. And this is like an urgent matter that sometimes it's understood as something as given, you know, like, oh, like bad news, he or she died because he was involved in a crash. But we know from international experience that this is not true, and there are a lot of measures to prevent this. And on the other hand, also the one of the main pollutants of the air is the emission of private cars. Private cars. So we need to stop using the car, and we need to save people from road crashes. So this is not an easy agenda because behind it has a lot of cultural issues that also deal with your daily decisions. And people don't want to be told like what to do with the way you move around the city, or how or where to wear the seatbelt or things like that. So it is rather a difficult agenda. And I would say that during these dark times, working in like a network was crucial. And also in the team that the team that coordinated all of this effort, we are 4 women. And also we have a word of the leadership that we had, because we call it liquid leadership. The 4 of us have very different profiles. Normally, you are used to have one leader and one is the face for everything that's happening. But then when you have different faces and you use the strengths, or even other organizations, sometimes we're leading the process. When you use the strength that is needed in the precise moment, everything changes. For example, the voices of the families that lost someone on the roads were super important at critical moments. Sometimes you needed more a voice of an activist, which we have one. Sometimes you needed the voice of a lawyer, which we also have one. And also being at Hertie with this diversity of professionals, also it's a way to practice, to learn how to work with different people from different backgrounds, with different attitudes, and to make the most out of each of the person. And this is teamwork. A lot of the things that we did at Hertie, it was about working in teams and using the skills and also invite to shine to everyone, because everyone has something to put on the table. And if we are able to find a strategic moment, I think this can make a difference. So, and also having always a common goal. In our case, to be able to collaborate in this huge network, it was important to know that we want two things. One, the approval of this change in the Constitution, and also the approval of the first national law on safe mobility and road safety. This is very clear. It's one thing, and the organizations can have like different goals, but if you are together because of this specific change, then people are more willing to put some of their work towards the objective that we are working on. So I think, yeah, this was one of the things that I thought when yeah, I mean, we need to work together, and yeah, let's shine everyone, because we are all we have a lot of things to share with people regarding public policy.
I appreciate it. And it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes: the smallest unit of performance is a team. It's not the individual, right? And how you use people in order to take care of each other. Anne-Marie, we can come back to your contribution. I want to make sure we also shift, right? I promised Nena, let's focus on right strategy. Joseph is about choices and not necessarily doing everything, but doing something more and doing something less. And I want to come to that question and bring you in, Jeff, on one of the other questions that we've received. What is it, when you think about the next 20 years and working toward the common good and preparing leaders, what is something that you would do more of? And if you want, also something you would do less of. So Jeff, you can go ahead and combine those 2 points if you want.
Yes, and I would like to combine this with another question that was sent in before the event, and that is, how do we decolonize the curriculum at Hertie? If I were in the position to change the trajectory of the Hertie School, I think this would be one of the major things I would focus on, but not only decolonizing curriculum, because I think that decolonization is always a much deeper process than just focusing on one measure or just on one section or so, but it is a process that goes through all of these sections, everything that makes up the Hertie School, from its histories and its origin of the money that this school is based on, to the curricula, to the faculty, and so on. So I think that, and one way to get there, if I'm given a short answer on the decolonizing, would be for the Hertie School to fully implement the recommendations that have been put forward by the Anti-Discrimination Task Force, which I was also part of. And if I want to make another connection, looking back to move forward is also eerily similar to a Ghanaian or Akan Adinkra proverb, which is called Sankofa. I think that Joseph should be very familiar with this. Yeah. And it basically says, go back to get it. So looking back to move forward, it is vitally important to look at the past and learn from it to chart a way in the future that is better, obviously. And looking back at the Anti-Discrimination Task Force, for example, which did this process of looking back at what structures are prevailing that are preventing diversity, for example, more diversity in our faculty, in the with the students, and with the curriculum. And I think that these recommendations really provide an starting point to address these issues. And it has been, I mean, the issues like racial justice, gender equality, LGBTQI plus rights for disabled individuals, and so on. And these have been largely absent from the curriculum so far. But I think it's essential that we, for one, as a Hertie community, as the Hertie School, also kind of go like depart this idea of discrimination being a thing that is on the individual level. I think it's essential to understand that discrimination isn't just microaggressions or like individual actions, but it is actually structural discrimination that is deeply embedded in our societies. And that is also affecting various sectors of our society, including the job market, labor market, and so on. And I think it's important to understand this as a structural and also as an institutional issue. And this lens is, I think, critical for the Hertie School to adopt, especially when educating new leaders, incubating them, preparing them to go into leadership positions. If I look back at the anti-discrimination task force, at first I was very hopeful, and I was also honored to be part of it. I'm still honored that I was part of it. But I have to say that I'm disappointed with the slow implementation of it, particularly with the curriculum and inequality. As I mentioned before, inequality poses such a threat to democracy and where we are, and that's why it's so crucial that the Hertie School adopts a comprehensive understanding of how discrimination, inequalities, and all of these issues actually constitute themselves. And of course, additionally, the lack of diversity among the faculty is, I think, still disheartening, especially given that we are an international school. We are situated in one of Berlin's most diverse districts, Berlin-Mitte, with more than 50% people with migrant background, and even more probably that have different discrimination dimensions, or that experience different discrimination dimension. Given that it is also such a loss for the Hertie School not benefiting from diverse thought. But despite these challenges, I think there's still hope to be had. And the Hertie School community, as we've discussed in the last hour or so, is a strong community with a lot of individuals that have influential positions and have a lot of knowledge, 30,000 years or so of knowledge to share. So I think that we can come together and analyze these issues and other issues and find ways to incorporate them, these analysis into the curriculum, so that we can equip future leaders and also ourselves and the Hertie School with the knowledge, the skills, and also the tools to really affect change and just having a completely reimagined way of how we deal with democracy.
Yeah. So let me pick up on this because it's very important. You're the president, right? Let's go to September 24. Given what you just said, like, what is the one thing you would be? Is that a class that is co-led with input from alumni working in this area? Is it a hiring process? What if you had to drill it down to one thing do more and one thing do less? What would it be from your perspective?
Like I said, it's not only one measure, but the first thing I would do even before September 24, I would bring together the Hertie School community and organize for a conference or some form of like a meeting where we first discuss what we have found in the anti-discrimination task force, but then also see how this could be implemented. And how we can change hiring processes, how we can maybe base admissions on more than just one dimension, which is so far class dimension, but also in other dimensions. Also to see what kind of knowledge is missing in the curriculum, being very honest about this, and then seeing how we can get this knowledge into the school. And I mean, there are so many unbelievable professors out there looking for jobs, looking to be employed because they often, because of the different forms of discrimination they experience, are excluded or don't have access to actually teach. So there is a huge roster, and I think that we have a community that is so like wide and well connected in the world that we will find amazing people to come join the university. Just like I said, there needs to be this structural change and this understanding that if we don't change and if we don't decolonize our structures, we will not be equipped to have impact in one of the most pressing issues that so many societies are facing.
There we go. I feel there's a concrete suggestion that we can take back and push forward on. I want to make sure on this do more and do less, on the big strategic question, right? Based on looking back, what is it that you would take forward? Who wants to go next?
I could go next if you want. So I think, so something for me, it's maybe, you know, to give, I mean, I already mentioned, I work on refugee policy for the Berlin ministry, and the topics of like refugee integration is a very, very, very complex topic, because it's not just about housing, it's about, you know, education. So it has lots of areas of work, and like basically we have to work with all the ministries together. And sometimes, you know, we have time to decide things, but sometimes we don't. Like right now, since like the bigger outburst of the Ukraine-Russian war, I mean, within a year, Berlin has received 50,000 refugees, more just to live here, just from Ukraine. And so, you know, like we had to build up massive shelters, et cetera, et cetera. So the situation just became quite intense very, very quickly. And so something for me, which I would like, you know, when I go back to the teaching of the school, I think something which Hertie really helped me, as I mentioned, was problem definition and analyzing stakeholder and everything. And I think something which they can do more of is then looking at, okay, how do we actually implement solutions to these really, really complex problems? Because I feel what we learn a lot of Hertie is like we do an analysis, we do a strategy, and then it's kind of like write a memo, pass a law, or something like this. But the reality in the public sector is so much more complex. And if we don't start being a minister, right? We start being a policy officer, and being a policy officer means you need to move in a very, very hierarchical topic, like the institution, in a very complex topic. So this is something which I think generally the school should look at. Like, okay, it was founded, one of the main reasons it was founded to bring like people into the public sector. And I've heard and I've experienced that it's really like, it's a real mind shift when you go into the public sector, because the reality looks a lot different than writing a policy memo. And so I think what I would really recommend to Hertie is like, you know, if I look at like actual skills, is maybe teaching a lot more on horizontal leadership. Like, how do you actually implement a solution when you don't have people like who have, as you mentioned, like who have to report to you? Like I have to convince another ministry to do something that I think is important and ready without having any official influence on it. And so this is something where I think, you know, we could learn. And also what means perseverance in that sense, because it's like the solutions I have, and we find they're very, very, like they're small. Like I have to find like the little bits of changes and I think this is something they can do more of. And maybe one third thing just to add on to this, and how do you do this? I think it's bringing in more alumni into the classes, right? Having people from the public sector, from the different sectors, like whatever you do, bring them into the classes, like let us speak for 30 minutes, 1 hour, whatever. Like, and I think like this will really, really change already the idea when you leave the school of how you, like, what will reality look like? And then you don't have people who get shocked by changing sectors and then, oh, look, this doesn't look like anything I learned at school. And because, you know, the skills we have are great, but the realities are unfortunately a lot more complex than we wish they are.
I appreciate that. It sounds like a class on Max Weber's drilling of hard boards and how that works. Damian, you picked up on skills as well, and I know you do a lot of work on talent as well. What's your perspective on this challenge? What would you do more and what would you do less?
So I'm actually thinking both about Anne-Marie's and Jeff's contribution. I think one thing that is a bit harder to catch, but what I find super important, is empowerment. So like, let's say you're very good at bringing in a diverse group of people. I think still like in the classes themselves, you will see that some people just believe they can change the world more than others because that is the experiences that they have made until this point. And I think to really to empower people to feel that they can change things while not getting, you know, depressed about the state of the world, which we discussed a bit earlier, how do you deal with that? But to somehow feel empowered enough to try. I think that is something that I would like to, I mean, and that's why I also give a project class at Hertie, but like what I'm trying to, you know, distribute a bit more, just that, you know, to give somehow the capacities, the tools, maybe the security, maybe access to scholarships, whatever it is, to really give this feeling of empowerment that I personally can matter in changing, if it is maybe just a small thing, but maybe also a bigger thing. I think that would be, for me, a dream. And the second part that I would really is maybe a bit more tangible. I would make this not a school of policy, but also of politics. Yeah, and the current situation is that policy is going less or more well. I mean, Anne-Marie maybe can tell us about how administration is working and so on. But what's really going to, sorry for the wording, to shit at the moment is politics. And so I think to understand that responsibility as a school of policy in Berlin, in Europe, at this point in time, is super important. And for me, that means bring the students and make them face things that don't work on a political level, actually get all the parties that are on a democratic spectrum, at least from Germany, to present themselves and say, we would like to, understand if you can help, here are ways you can help. Make them, bid like in the career fairs. We bring all these companies in, or NGOs, bring all the parties in, bring them there and say, now party XYZ, show why you are cool for our students. I think just to make a bit more visible that, and we can go through a very quick example to make it very tangible on the migration part. Yeah, every Hertie student that doesn't come from the EU has an issue with the German Ausländerbehörde, our foreign, I don't even know what it's called, foreign office, I don't know. I talked to the boss of the Berlin, authority working on this, and he said, my reasoning why all of this isn't working is because of political choices of the Berlin Senate, of the Berlin Parliament. It's not my problem. Yeah, it's how the law is structured is complicated, and I'm not getting the resources. And when I want to digitize, I can't, because actually there is this weird digitization agency which is full of old politicians, which has a contract for the next 7 years with the city of Berlin, which doesn't allow me to digitize anything. So you come to the root cause, which is a political choice of mismanagement. And so this is just one example of why I think don't forget about politics when you talk about policy issues. And I think we can become a bit more of a school of politics in addition to policy.
I already see that class in front of me where, taking Joseph's example, you actually go to where the people you serve are, or where the problems are, you learn about them, you take it back. I mean, so is there something that specific, right? If Damian, if you're teaching that class, is there something that could be done more of in that sense? Is that more of those project classes? Is it an entirely different approach? What would need to happen?
I think it would have to be a practical experience. I think it's very nice that we share skills, and skills are important, but to really position ourselves in the ongoing politics of things, I think you have to think about campaigns. You have to think about social issues, political issues that you currently care about, and try to understand how to influence them. And I would, either let students choose themselves issues, or, make a bigger issue for the university. But I think also maybe the professors and maybe students could try to get more active in political debates, bringing in more of our expertise. I think that into the talk shows of this world or whatever, or even think of new formats of talking about politics or something. I mean, I think we should just not let all of this slide by and think that it doesn't matter to us. We just teach skills of politics. But I have to think about how to structure classes in addition to the one that I'm giving. I would have to think about that.
We'll come back to that, and I'm not saying it's your job, but I want to come back to the school with some concrete ideas. I want to push all of you a little bit on the doing less, right? Any one of you who has been involved in strategy knows that it's not just adding things to what you're already doing, but it's being focused, and getting rid of things is actually the most strategic thing you can do. Is there something that comes to mind? And Alejandra, you mentioned small class sizes, but then also that was 10 years ago. So I think it has grown tremendously. There are things that have changed, and the school needs to make strategic choices about what it does more of and less. And what would you put forward for less based on your experience?
Yeah, like maybe less. It's going to sound a little bit contradictory, but I would say less online things, but and more in-person things. Like, for example, I would love to have some research or presented here in Mexico directly by one of the professors from the Hertie School, because this will bring together the community here in the country and also even like from Latin America. So for me, it would be important to have this personal connection, but also taking into consideration what has been said. I also agree that alumni can be more involved. And like, for example, all of the process of the law process that we have been coordinating, it was made online. So we had a parliamentary process that was open, and we showed documents, we worked online on documents. So I would say it would be important also to have online facilitated workshops, but not only dialogues like this, but really well-structured working workshops. So this is the objective, and who will be participating, dividing in groups, giving feedback to something that is already written, you know, like really get involved on public policy of the matters that are really crucial in this moment worldwide. So I think having both, like as like nationally having these events in person, maybe have them online as well, something like hybrid, but using the experience and the knowledge of all of the alumni across the world to come up with some proposals, specific proposals of public policy on the agenda that we think is crucial nowadays.
So I'm hearing less classes without alumni as well, and less travel without alumni. And I know I'm moderating, but you just reminded me of my time at the World Bank when I found out there was a visit by a Hertie professor giving a talk on a topic that I actually work on. How on earth is that possible? And I'm sorry, but they're missing out, right? Because they're talking about the theory and we are doing it on a day-to-day basis and can inform what's going on. Anything else less of that you can think of before we move on? I want to make sure, right? These are the tough questions because less is usually the harder one.
I have a very quick one only. I mean, I think foundation classes have the advantage of bringing everyone to the same level, like, I don't know, macroeconomics or microeconomics, but like, or math, but maybe sometimes that time could also be used for something else. And I know it's a difficult trade-off, but if you want to focus on something that has nothing to do with econ, maybe, you know, it's also fine. Or if you have a background in these fields already, don't make people take that class again. I think that would also be a good choice to look at what people already have done.
All right. I know we have some questions. Anna-Marie, go ahead.
I can just very, very quickly to add on to this. And I think something which I was still had the privilege of is I didn't need to decide on a course like after when I did my studies. So I think less of, you know, making people decide on courses and go into directions and give them the flexibility throughout the 2 years to choose courses as they come and go, because I think we keep developing throughout the years, and this way we can, you know, they can actually get the most out of what they really want.
All right. I want to come to one of the questions that I see. How to make the school more appealing to students of diverse racial and cultural backgrounds. And I do think I want to combine that one, and then whoever wants to take that on. To me, you know, Alejandra, you also mentioned the stipends and scholarships, right? I mean, we have to think about an institution that can't just do everything it wants to do, but it has to be based on resources, especially if we think about access to opportunities. It's based on enabling those scholarships. So maybe we can tackle those two together in terms of how do we make it more appealing, but also how can we find the resources to do it, if you have ideas, because this is a topic that we at the Alumni Council have discussed with the school on numerous occasions too.
Actually, I would like to start because Jeff previously said that maybe we had a lot of job offers once we graduated from the Hertie School, but no one's know Hertie here in Mexico. Like, that was not my case. Like, honestly, or in Latin America, it's not a name that means like something. So I think we need to make this global. I mean, Hertie is an amazing school, and in order to have this brand everywhere, I think we need to share the research that's been doing, the work that's being doing by the school. And it implies to come and visit the different countries. Really, I want to say again, I want the professors being here in the region, and also like for the people to know more about what we have been doing, and how this approach is making changes, like already in Europe mainly. Yeah.
So this is a specific invitation I'm hearing, and an offer to be a case study.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joseph.
I think what the school probably needs to do is to be able to have maybe a communication strategy. I think there's a lot going on now, but deliberate communication strategy that tells you how you want to communicate some of the good programs that you do have. If you look at Hertie right now, we have bits and pieces of, it's known for policy school. And then it is also known for bringing international students together. But what is that one thing that would say stands out that the public really wants to hear about Hertie School? I can't say. So that already tells you that there's still the need to do more around that. What is that unique selling point that the Hertie School has to stand out? That it comes every year. Most of the time you can see it. If you see Hertie, you are able to identify it with this. But what I also see other universities do, I can tell you about Sierra Leone here, the past election. We had a student from the Harvard School who studied science and all of those things. And the way they were hyping that particular, their alumni, they're just hyping him, providing support and all of those things. That already is making, the school very popular here in Sierra Leone. But there are a lot of Hertie alumni who are doing great work. I think they have the Achievement Award, but there is a need to profile more of what these people are doing when it comes to policy transformation, when it comes to innovation or community-driven solutions that are to help in problem solving across the whole country. We have different kinds of skills. Some are in the NGO, some are into politics, some are into business, and all of those things. So if we're able to support those courses, because the university in the end has to go into social businesses, you can only go into some of those things if you are able to support some of your alumni who are doing really, really very creative, innovative things that are helping to solve community problems or global problems and all of those things. The other thing that I would say they need to focus on more, I said it earlier on, and I think Damien also talked about it, is the fact that I think we need to go beyond politics, policy, and to think about how does the world work now? If I look at the global problems that we have now with the issue of Ukraine, with the issue of Russia, with the issue of all of those things, what is lacking right now? It's not just about technology. It's not about issue of power. It's not about politics. It's what is lacking is emotions. Like, how do you deal with emotions? How do you deal with power? How do you deal with, issues like that? What is it that everybody wants that they are not able to come together to be able to solve this global problem? Because if we are able to have those kinds of skills, how to be able to get around some of these problems, negotiation, how do you deal with the interests of other people? How do you deal with power? Something which was lacking, because if you go with all of this academic one, then you go through the best practices in policies and all of those things. The reality is completely different. And I can give you practical examples of how Sierra Leone, when they started to do policies around women's empowerment, and then you think that they are going to follow the normal procedure. And it doesn't work that way. There's so much power, there's contestation, there's so much interest that you need to negotiate with. And if you are not able to meet all of those interests, nothing is going to work. Nobody comes to some of these things without an interest. And so they need to be able to come out with some of those courses that actually meet global needs, because it is shifting, it is changing. And if we don't change along, then definitely maybe one other institution will come in and hijack that, and then we'll start going. And what are the major policy problems, or maybe the global issues that we need to deal with? Issues around climate change. I know there were courses around climate change, but how do we position ourselves in such a way that Now everybody is having global meetings, big conferences, and the problem is not solved. And then you go, and then they have all kinds of policies. They have all kinds of instruments that you need to follow, and the problem is not solved. The question can be, how can Hertie come out with a real practical solution around policies or whatever is capacity building issues around climate change? Because it's not just politics about the institutional politics, but the environmental politics that we have right now, especially in developing countries like Africa. We are facing some of those things. And what we would like to see is more of practical solutions. We don't want to be bothered about which theory did Germany use or which theory did the British or whatever use or whatever. We need practical solutions. And when we have to have those ones, we should have people who are working in those institutions coming to be able to deliver some of these lectures and be able to use practical experience for us to understand. Yeah, I don't dispute the fact that we should have professors who study those things. But usually, if you watch, I was in the Hertie School, and then I tried to teach some of the professors their minds into other fields, and you realize that they don't have any other knowledge around that. They are more very much oriented to the things that they know. If I shift them a little bit to creativity, then it becomes so hard for them to be able to help me to understand that. And so what we need to have diverse types of individuals with different skills that can help the school.
Joseph, I think you're all aware that there's a practice council that the school works with. My latest knowledge is that a lot of the practice council is filled with German administrative personnel. I think there's a pitch here to make that practice council really inform what a curriculum and how it could look like, including with the alumni input. Just one thought from my side. Torben put a question forward to us, and I know Jeff wanted to come back to it. It's a really important one, right? When you discuss diversity, you need to think about diversity of thought. And I remember in our first class, we were very, very small. We were close to 30 people only. We had really intense fights about politics, policies. We had people from Russia, from many different other countries who thought very differently about world politics. And to me, those fights, when they were civil, they were extremely helpful to make you aware of what's going on, right? To leave your echo chamber. So I think Torben's question, Jeff, if you want to pick up on it and add your thinking on it, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, it's interesting that you say that you have had a lot of fights. I think looking back at my time at Hertie, I didn't have all that many fights in terms of different directions, or I don't want to say that we were always agreeing on everything, but generally I would say that we had a shared understanding and analysis of political systems and how what needed to be done. So that's interesting, and also something to look back at. Why did that change? So what maybe, I mean, in your class, what still attracted people who have different ideas and different thoughts about politics, and what kind of now is holding them back and joining? Maybe it is that the Hertie School is being perceived as being progressive, but that then again, to me, is in contrast with the curriculum, which is kind of neoliberal in a lot of ways, is also in contrast with what I just mentioned about the state of decolonization of the Hertie School. So that's interesting. I mean, I think it would make sense to really go deep into this and to make like an analysis of this.
And just in fairness, sorry for interrupting, I want to make sure we reference the real question, because Torben, I don't think everyone could see it. So is the Hertie School attractive enough for people with a benevolent, not populist, conservative attitude? I know only very few students, alumni with an open conservative positions. I actually know a few too. They could enrich the debate and be an integrative factor. That was the starting question for everyone who's here. And I know, Jeff, please go on. And I know, Damian, you want to come in as well, right?
And yeah, thanks. I would definitely agree with what Torben has said in terms of having more conservative voices or voices from different spectrum. Like, the thing is, I'm not a big fan of this left-right divides in politics. I think this is so simplistic, and it doesn't really speak to me at least, and it doesn't really speak to many people and their opinions and what they think is important in life. It's much more like a globe or something where you have different opinions, or you have different, like for example with me, I am I would say progressive in many ways, but also conservative in some ways. So I'm outing myself here as someone who holds also conservative views, and I think it's absolutely important to have these voices in Hertie School as well, to be able to have debates about this, to be able to also understand where somebody who is super conservative, for example, is coming from. What is it that is driving this person? Because this is, of course, informative when we want to go out in the world and build policies that include the lived realities of all people in society and try to construct ways for everybody to be heard in the best case, is understanding where people are coming from and also challenging people, of course, and also getting challenged yourself, because much of the beliefs that I have that are harbored in my bubble, or the bubbles that I'm in, could be kind of outdated, could be kind of things that are a product of groupthink. And I think that it's so important, as we all know, to step out of your bubbles, but also maybe to open up your bubble so that other people can come in, some bubbles can form together, so that we can really have a representation of the society in Hertie as well, of different directions people are going and solutions that they have for the problems that we're facing. I always enjoy speaking with conservatives and kind of poking them a little bit, playing devil's advocate with some of the things that I don't agree with, and I think it's very enriching and should be implemented in Hertie as well.
All right, last panelist, Damian, over to you.
Okay, I'll try to be quick then. I think honestly this is a super interesting question because it challenges us a lot. Yeah. So I mean, just to out myself, I come from a rather conservative background, but I've been, sitting here with the Greens. My whole movement is qualified as very progressive, and I would also describe myself as very progressive. But if you look at, like, for example, data that I have from the US about, the left bubble, if you want to call it like this, you can see that they're very tolerant for everything but people who are not tolerant. So this is an interesting situation. Like, imagine someone openly walking around the Hertie campus being anti-abortion and anti-migration, or like, talking about whether, I mean, this is just the challenge I can already feel when I say this myself. And I think that is a question that we haven't really answered, how to do that, and maybe we don't want to. Yeah, I think it's also fair enough. But I think to think about how to maybe invite people from a more political diverse spectrum to speak at the school, and how to also talk about accepting different belief systems, or even if we don't accept them, understand that maybe someone values a certain fundamental value more than another. I mean, you can be conservative. For example, you want surveillance on the streets because you believe that security is more important than privacy. That's a different valuation of fundamental values, if you want. So, and I think to teach that, to learn that, and to have this difficult debate constantly would be something very enriching for the Hertie community.
So with that, we have the last recommendation in the school's direction. And there were quite a few. And I think there is one theme that absolutely comes through, which is there is enthusiasm, there is a connection to helping the school be relevant in the current age and in the next 20 years by contributing as an alumni community. And so this is really the start of a conversation. It's not the end, but it is the end of this panel. And I want to first thank the panelists taking 90 minutes out of your day after a long day of work. I really appreciate. We usually don't take 90 minutes anymore for conversations, and I really appreciate the patience and the thoughtfulness that you have brought to this conversation. Thanks again to Nena and the team for setting this up. And also thanks to all of you who participated. I know there will be a recording, and we will make sure with my colleagues at the Alumni Council that we summarize this conversation, we bring it back to our conversations with the school. There are some really important issues here that we should continue to tackle. 3 things. You've seen those award alumni. There is a call for nomination that's coming soon. There are a lot of people who have done amazing work. out there, go and nominate them, help them get the attention and the recognition that they deserve. Alejandra, I really appreciated how you mentioned how it really helped you as well in the work that you're doing. There are live events with the chapters, the alumni chapter. My chapter here in DC is extremely active, thanks to 2 excellent leads. And we're doing a lot of events. We're exchanging, we're meeting. We're actually having a dinner with everyone next week, and a lot of the current students as well, to integrate them of what awaits them once they are part of the alumni community. We may pay for their drinks, let's see. And then lastly, there is a Hertie Summit, a big one coming and planned to celebrate the 20th anniversary. One thing that is really important to me in those instances is don't just celebrate events. It becomes hollow. It needs to be meaningful, and we need to look forward to what it means for the next 20 years, because all of what the school is focused on in its mission is to create and lead and school and teach the next generation of leaders for the common good. So thank you for joining. I know we will stay in touch, and this is not the last conversation. Have a wonderful evening and rest of the day.